to comment and talk about my first years with Knight Transportation. So that's what we're going to talk about today, the years when I first came to Knight as a company driver. And this was back in 2008. So we'll cover the years from 2008 all the way up until 2012 or 2011, when I actually bought Old Red. So this is a review of being a company driver at Knight Transportation for those years. So sit back and relax and we'll talk about that. Hopefully we'll answer all the questions that you guys present to me on a daily basis about those years. Well, when I first started at trucking, I worked for Werner, but I wasn't really happy with Werner because I was only getting little 200-300 mile trips. So I was looking for another place to go that, you know, could make me more money so that I could get more miles in. And I would see these trucks coming down the freeway that were red and shiny and they looked awesome. I know that's not the reason you should pick a trucking company, but when you're new, you do go for that shiny bait, like, you know, on the end of a hook, the fish swimming down in the river, he sees the bait, and that's what you go for. So I found out they were Knight trucks, and we didn't have much social media back then, so there wasn't really a good way to find out about trucking companies other than one place, and that was the Truckers Report. We did have that. So I went in there and read a bunch of information about Knight Transportation, and I also found that I went to every place that I went, like a truck stop or something, I would always ask a Knight driver, hey, how do you know, are you being treated good at night? Are you getting miles? So I did a lot of homework in that regard and found out that Knight Transportation was the one place that I wanted to go based on what all the drivers told me when I would ask them at truck stops. Also, I did some research and found out that Knight was a debt-free company, so I knew that they wouldn't have financial problems, so I went to work for Knight. So I called Knight and talked to this lady at the Lakeland division of Knight. Her name was Angela, and she was very friendly, and I talked to her, and she was my recruiter, and she, you know, told me what to do and how to, you know, I filled out an application online, and I actually went to work for the Lakeland division of Knight Transportation and started there, went to orientation. My first load out of Knight was a load on a Friday after orientation. You know, you get your truck, you're all excited, but it was an overnight load from the Lakeland yard going to a Sam's in Pensacola. It rained the whole night. I was tired, but I did it, and that was my first load. Everyone remembers their first load when they start a trucking company. After I worked for Knight in Lakeland for a little while, I was doing some loads to Southern California, and I got to know a guy there named Todd Cunningham, and he convinced me to transfer to Southern California. So I did that, and I needed to go to California anyway, and I got together, did all the personal things that I had to do. I transferred to Southern California, moved all my stuff there, and I started to work for Todd Cunningham in the Southern California division. So it wasn't too long after that that I brought my Florida truck to this very U-Haul here in Kissimmee, Florida, with a trailer. I brought it in here. I unloaded all of the things out of my Florida truck and put them in storage here and I got on an airplane and flew to Southern California to pick up my Southern California truck. I was real excited about that, about transferring to the Southern California division. And the reason I left all my things here is I carry too many things with me to put on an airplane. So then later, when I transferred to Southern California, I got a load back here and brought my Southern California truck right here to this location and picked up all my things for my truck, like my TV and all the things that you don't really have to have, but you want to have. I hope you like these stories about how I started with Knight. And a lot of people ask about them, so I figured I'd do one show all about Knight as a company driver. And that's what these stories are. At the end of this video, I'm going to do my top 5 pros and my top 5 cons of working for Knight Transportation. So thanks for bearing with me. This story is, once I was in Southern California, one of the first loads that I did was going to pick up liquor near San Francisco, all kind of booze, and had taken it to a cruise ship in Long Beach, California, and that was real awesome. I did that, and that was neat because it became the signature picture for my show here when I took that picture of my truck right next to the Queen Mary, and that's what that ship is, right next to the picture of my truck and the ship. That's the Queen Mary in Long Beach, California. That became my signature picture, and that was an awesome load and an awesome memory for me working for Knight in Southern California. As a new driver, I made some mistakes. I remember back in 2008, one time I was in Longview, Washington, and I got a load to pick up heavy paper out of there. It's a big paper mill. And I went to pick up the load. It was about 9 o'clock at night. I had been working all night long. We were on paper logs in those days. So I was tired, and I pulled into the lot there in Longview, and I heard this cannon going off, big loud cannon noises. It was pouring down rain. I back under my trailer and I did a tug test, pulled on it, and it was fine. The trailer pulled forward, but as I backed out, the trailer came off the back of my tractor, and it came off. Didn't do any damage, but it was embarrassing because it left the trailer stranded in the middle of the yard there, and I couldn't get back underneath it. So I didn't know what the problem was at that time. So I went up to the guard and I explained to him what had happened, and I took my tractor to Portland so that they could look at it. I really thought it was a defect in my fifth wheel and that it didn't connect. But I took it there and there was no problem with it. So then I went back to Longview and we got a crane to pick up the trailer and lift it onto my tractor. All that had happened was, because of the cannons and the rain, I didn't connect correctly, and it was my problem as a rookie trucker. So that's one of the rookie mistakes that I made early on in my career in trucking at Knight. Not too long after that, I asked Knight if I could buy a truck and be a part of their lease purchase program. Well, the safety director came to me. His name's Joaquin. I think he's still there. He said, no, you can't do that because your log scores are too low. What they did in those days before electronic logs, you would take your paper log, turn it into Knight, and they would compare it to their logs, and my score was too low, and they called that a log score. So they said, hey, if you bring up your log scores, then you can lease a truck. And that's what I did. I purchased a computer program so that I did my logs on a regular PC, and then I had no problems. And then I went back to Joaquin and I said, hey, have you noticed my scores are climbing? And he said, yeah. And then he signed off on the final approval on me buying a truck at night once my log scores had increased enough, and they were as high as they could go because I was doing them on a computer. And it was a few months later that Knight actually went on to electronic logs themselves, so then I didn't have to do my logs on a separate computer anymore.
Good morning, I'm Bill. When I'm not moving trailers or at home building or fixing stuff, you can find me watching Adventures in Trucking with Indiana Jack. Stay tuned.
I told you at the end of this video I'd give you my 5 pros and my 5 cons about working for Knight from the time when I was an employee. The biggest reason for me liking to work for Knight when I was new was the equipment. I really liked the trucks that they had to offer. I drove, of course, Old Red, which was the first truck that I drove for them, a Volvo, and I also drove an International for a short period of time. So they really kept up their trucks nice, and that's the first pro thing that I can say about Knight, and one reason that I liked working there at Knight Transportation, the equipment. Number 2, at that point I really liked Southern California, so I liked who I was working for, the managers, the dispatchers, how they did things. I liked them and they liked me, and it was a mutual thing. Number 3, the lanes. Southern California up 5, 10, those were my favorite lanes. So number 3 was the lanes that I rode in. Number 4, Todd would always call me and he'd say, Jack, I got 3 loads. And he'd say, I got a California to Mississippi, I got a Southern California to Washington, I got a load to Denver. Which one do you want to do? That is the classy way to dispatch. It was, in my opinion. So I really liked that. That's number 4 on my list. They pretty much let me choose the loads that I wanted to do during that era that I worked there. The number 5 reason that I like to work there was they let me choose when I wanted to be off. I would often email my dispatcher and say, hey, can I be off from this day to this day? And they would always let me take off the time that I needed to be off, which was important to me. I was taking care of my mom then, and she died during that era, so it wasn't all positive. But because of the fact that I could get off, and they were pretty, they would cater to what I needed to be off because of her and her passing away. That's the last pro. Even though it was a negative for me, that actually helped because I was able to bury my mom and get the time off that I needed to do that. That's number 5 on our positive list, as odd as that seems, and it just worked out that way. After this short message from Indiana Jack on Patreon, we'll conclude the video with the 5 cons on me working at Knight Transportation and the problems that I had working there and the things that you might experience if you work there also. So stay tuned after this and we'll talk about those things. Patreon, if you want to know what that is, because people ask me, it's a website at patreon.com that you can go to, and if you've seen all of my films, you can go there and see more films for the price of a Subway sandwich. You don't have to go there, it's just something you can do as an option, something I've chosen to do to kind of branch out and to just not be on YouTube and just not be on Facebook. So that's what Patreon is. Go to patreon.com and search for Indiana Jack, And you can see some extra films there if you've seen all the rest of them that I've made. This place is an absolute dump. I hope they don't want me to pull up in that loading dock. I think this is the first time I've ever hauled dartboards. You know, you'd think they'd make mattresses and other things made out of foam, but I never thought of a dartboard. But you're right, underneath a dartboard is foam. Well, you know the drill. We've made it to West Memphis, Arkansas. It's absolutely a beautiful morning here in Matthews, Missouri.
Hi, I'm Gear Jammin' Mike, and you're watching Adventures in Trucking with Indiana Jack.
The hurricane's right here, and it's coming right up Florida. If it's going to go more towards Nashville and Atlanta, I'll go over to the Carolinas, you know, over towards Charlotte. If it's going to go over to the Carolinas, then I'll go over more towards Alabama. So we're just kind of waiting on the storm, one, and waiting to get this load unloaded, two. If you sign up there, soon I will be doing live things where I'll be actually chatting with you live on a computer right from Patreon. So if you like that kind of thing, I won't be doing that on Facebook or on YouTube, but I will be doing it there. So if you like that kind of thing, come on over there and check it out and talk to me over on Patreon.com. I'm Indiana Jack over there. We look forward to seeing you there. What's the differential? So first they drained the differential oil and they pulled out the axle. That's the driver's side axle right there. Well, they wanted to put the original oil back in there. I said, no way, you know, I want to get new oil in there. I'm trying to get a load here. And I've got my eye on one going to Troy, Alabama. There's the hidden sign. All right, we're loaded, man. They're fast here. Everything's gone really smooth. Of course I want battery acid washed out of my truck. Getting all that acid off my hands. The bad thing about C.H. Robinson, all their loads are those 45,000 pound loads that I used to do at night. Houston, we have a little bit of a problem. These might fall out. Hopefully not. We do have to unhook here so they can start unloading us, so let's dolly down. Welcome back. The first thing, the number one thing that I did not like about my time at night was, and I've told you guys over and over if you've watched my show, and that is trying to find an empty. Excuse me, that was always an issue. We never had enough trailers to go around. There weren't enough trailers in the trailer pool, so I would spend a lot of my time going around trying to find an empty, and that's the one reason that I did not like my time there at night, was trying to find an empty. The number 3 reason, or the number 2 reason actually, of not enjoying my time there, I did enjoy my time there, but I told you I'd give you 5 and 5, so here they are. Number 2 was, on the weekends especially, you would be on hold sometimes for an hour waiting for a dispatcher to talk to you. And if it was beneficial and you needed to talk to a dispatcher, then you were willing to wait the hour on hold sometimes on the weekends to communicate with dispatch. And that's the number 2 reason. The number 3 reason that I came up with of the con list is kind of unique only to Southern California. I don't think anyone else had this problem, but because me and some other guys wanted to sometimes go east rather than just drive the west when we got tired of going up and down 5. We wanted to go east sometimes. There was this one guy, and I can't remember his name, but he was the planner in Denver, and he hated Southern California. He hated the dispatchers there. He hated the division manager. He hated us, the drivers. So he would never give us good loads or loads east. He was the gatekeeper to keep us from going east, and everybody hated that about him. And so we knew, though, that we always could go through El Paso, so we would request loads to go east through El Paso. Well, wouldn't you know it, this guy transfers to El Paso, but he also still had control over Denver. So now we're blocked from going east from not only Denver, but now El Paso. So unless we get a direct load from LA to the east, we're not getting by this gatekeeper dude. He's not going to let us go east from those 2 locations, which were a pretty important gateway. The only other option was maybe to go through Salt Lake, which we had friends there that would give us loads around up through Wyoming to get east, and that was our only option at that point. But that's number 3 on my list of cons. But even though that's unique only to Southern California, I don't know if that rivalry is still there, or even if that Billy Goat troll is still there blocking us. But that was my number 3 list of not liking working for night as a company driver in Southern California. You know what? I promised you 5 cons of the negative experiences that I had with night, and I cannot think of a 4 and 5. I apologize. I lied. I didn't lie, but I just can't remember any other things as a company driver that would go on my con list. And that kind of concludes this video. In the next video, we'll review my years with night after I purchased Old Red and the experiences that I had there as an owner-operator at night. Hey, thanks for watching. Appreciate you riding along with me. I'm Indiana Jack. We'll see you next time.